Welcome to For the Long Run, the podcast exploring the why behind what keeps runners running long, strong, and motivated. I'm your host, Jonathan Levitt. Through personal and professional connections in the running world, I have the privilege of getting to know some amazing athletes. I've always been fascinated by the psychological aspect of running, and this podcast is aimed at exploring this and much more. I hope you enjoy. This podcast is brought to you by Access Nutrients. If you routinely consume foods made from grains, beans, nuts, seeds, or soy, you may unknowingly be ingesting large amounts of phytate, an anti-nutrient that pulls zinc, iron, calcium, and magnesium out of your body. For anyone struggling with digestion, energy, sleep, or micronutrient deficiencies like iron deficiency, anemia, consider giving Access Nutrients a try. This digestive enzyme will break down the phytate in your food and give your body access to the micronutrients otherwise locked up and unavailable to you. They've already had incredible success with elite athletes struggling with iron absorption and energy. Check out some of the incredible testimonials and research on their site to learn more at accessnutrients.org and use the code FTLR for 10% off your first order. Welcome back. I have Emma Kertez joining me on the podcast today. Emma, thanks so much for taking some time to chat.
Of course. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
For sure. So you are joining a trio of pairs that I've had on the podcast. I've had the Roches on twice, or both of the Roches. I've had Jacob and Amy Pusey, and now Emma and Noah. So
awesome.
It's a rarefied air. So thanks thanks for coming on to chat.
Thank you. Good company too. So that's pretty cool.
For sure. Strong on the Boulder contingent.
Yes.
Well, awesome. Before we go too far, who is Emma?
Oh, wow. A wearer of many hats.
Stuff right off the...
A wearer of many hats, for sure. So a runner, an educational consultant, which I just started doing at the beginning of the school year, a dog mom, Noah Drade's fiance, a seltzer connoisseur, and an Ohioan, or I guess I should say an Ohioan expat.
Got it. And a mood board curator.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe I forgot that. Yes, a mood board curator. That's like my pride and joy on Sunday. I'm taking an Instagram break right now for this week, but I planned it so I would start it after last Sunday's mood board, and then I would end it before I put up this coming Sunday's mood board.
That's phenomenal planning.
Thanks.
So given it's a running podcast, we'll start with the running side of things and then dive into all of the other hats that you wear, I'm sure, sort of woven into that. So you're a speedy runner yourself, and you've run in the Olympic trials and done some super cool stuff out in Boulder. Do you remember your first run?
Yes, actually, my first real run was a Thanksgiving Day 5K. When I was a junior in high school, my dad was working with a local support group that's similar to like Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's called Racing for Recovery. And they had put on a Thanksgiving Day 5K, and I was there volunteering, helping set up waters and yada, yada, doing whatever my dad told me to do. And about 30 minutes before the start of the race, he asked me if I wanted to just jump in, because I was a soccer player. And, he's like, oh, if you want, you could just jump in. Like, we'll give you a bib if you would like to. And so I did, not really knowing what I was doing, but I ran like 21 minutes for the 5K. So I was pretty happy with that. I didn't really know what it meant, but I was just like, cool, that was fun. And then I ran track that spring in high school. And then the following fall, I actually quit soccer to run cross country because I enjoyed that 5K so much. And the track coach, who was also the cross country coach, was like, okay, if you can run 21 minutes by just jumping in to a 5K, you need to run cross country. So that was really how it all began for me.
And things escalated from there.
Quickly, yes.
Talk to me about that quick escalation.
Sure. So I ran cross country, like I said, my senior year of high school. I won the city championships, like the district championships, and ended up going on to the state meet. I believe I placed 30th. And then, so had like a pretty successful first cross country season, and then was recruited by some local colleges. I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, and then I went on, eventually ended up accepting a scholarship from the University of Toledo. And so for me, only having 1 year of cross country under my belt from my senior year of high school, it was a steep learning curve my freshman year of college to be thrown into a Division I program that at the time was one of the better programs in the MAC. And so steep learning curve. And I finally got the hang of things and the training by about like the middle of my sophomore year. And then I was consistently training and ended up doing really well in college. But it's funny to think back. We had to write down our goals our freshman year for our pretty much our entire like collegiate career. And one of my goals, by the time I left college, I wanted to run 18 flat in the 5K and run close to 5:10 in the mile. And those were my goals because I was like a 19 flat girl coming out of high school and I ran 5:20 in the mile. And so I'm just like, why was no one like, okay, Emma, dream bigger? Like, what are you doing? No. And I destroyed those goals, so it's just funny to like look back and think like, oh, baby Emma, you just, you know.
If you only knew.
Yes, exactly.
Now you could probably run that when fatigued at elevation, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, but I just think it's just like, that's where my head was. I was just like, that'd be so cool if I could run like 18 flat in the 5K.
What would you say to Emma of then, knowing what you know now?
Oh, that's a good question. I think, that there's going to be a lot more opportunities than you realize right now, and also to enjoy where you're at, because, you know, when I was trying to get into shape and, you know, so I'm from Ohio, a little background information, like I've said now like 5 times. And so I graduated the same year as Emily Infeld. And so at the track meet, the Ohio State High School Track Meet Championships, when we were seniors, I didn't actually make it to state in the mile, but I did in the 2 mile. But I got to actually watch that mile race of Emily Infeld, and I believe she ran like 4:48 for the win. And I remember being like, oh my God, like she is so good. And so with that, seeing those kinds of races my senior year, and then being on a Division I program my freshman year, I wanted to get good really fast. And, you know, I look back now and I'm like, oh, I wish I would have like enjoyed more where I was at that time, instead of being like, I really want to be better and I want to be faster. And I wish I would have been a little more present while I was training to get better. But then again, I'm like, well, it worked out. So
yeah, the presence piece is interesting. It's something I've tried to focus on a lot lately in this year and in 2020. So David, my coach, has reminded me to be present and enjoy the moment in a variety of arenas outside of running. He was reminding me of this in regards to dating as well. And it's funny that like the crossover that running has with so many different places in life, that like this, you should be having fun. You should be enjoying yourself. Yes, that's true with running, but it's true with anything. So I think it's a good reminder.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so there are some I'm glad that there are some aspects of my college career that I do hold those memories very dear. You know, the first time I broke 5 in the mile, spoiler alert, I broke 5 in the mile. I ran faster than 5:10. And
I was going to save that for the 38th minute, but I guess we're onto it now.
Yeah, so I did end up running 4:47 for the mile by the time I was a senior in college. But I remember the first time I broke 5 in the mile, and that is a memory that I'll always have. You know, that was something that I thought I would never be able to do. And the same thing with, you know, running 16:30 in the 5K and running 33:30 on the track in the 10K. Those were barriers that I didn't even 18-year-old Emma wouldn't have even fathomed. And so those were really special moments.
So fast forward a few more years and you're running in the Olympic trials.
Yes.
How did that journey come about? When did that become a dream on the horizon, or was it a dream?
Yeah. So actually, my senior year of college, when I ran 33:28 in the 10K on the track, that was 2012. And so I went to the early Stanford meet in March and I ran that time. And at that time, so granted, it was a little naive, but at that time, I had hit the B standard for the trials 10K on the track. And so, you know, I was like, wow, like I might just sneak in, you know, with my time. Like that would be so cool if I could be at the Olympic trials in the 10K on the track. But of course, then May happened in June, and I went from, you know, being like in the higher 20s down to like, I think I ended up was like 55th on the list. And so I was like, okay, if just like 30 women don't run this in front of me, maybe I'll get in. I mean, I didn't, you know, like I was just so excited that I had run that fast. And that was a really big deal for me just to hit the B standard. And obviously I did not go to the track trials in 2012, but that really set the fire for the rest of my career and wanting to run at the Olympic trials. And I had my college coach, Sarah Fergotti, who's at the Ohio State University. Oh my gosh, I'm even saying it. At Ohio State. I'm like, what's happening?
I have a buddy from high school who went to the Ohio State University as well. So okay. I'm well versed with the Ohio State University.
Wow, I'm like very indoctrinated. Anyway,
it's just like rolled off the tongue. And
I know. Jeez.
Get it in the stride there.
So she's the distance coach there now, and
at the Ohio State
University, and she's phenomenal. She was a big deal at the University of Toledo. She went there for her undergraduate and won the Mid-American Conference 10K, went to nationals in the steeple, was just a big deal. And so she was the assistant coach at Toledo when I was there. And I remember we did like a 2-hour long run together on one Sunday, and it went really well because we would run long runs really hard. And I was just like, that felt good. And she had said, she's like, I think you have a future in the marathon, if that's something you're interested in, just the way that you are able to do these longer thresholds and these long runs. I think like you have the mental capacity and the physical capacity to do the longer stuff if you wanted to. And so that really kind of like planted the seed for me that I was like, I'm going to be a marathoner someday. And so it was 2 years after I graduated that I went and ran CIM in 2014 and ran 2:42 in my first marathon and got my trials qualifier for 2016.
What was it like running that fast in your first marathon? I mean, I've had a few people on the podcast who ran in the trials and their first marathon was like 4:30.
Sure. Yeah.
And their story was an evolution of, okay, I'll, run a marathon and then see how quick I can get. You jumped in there, and was that the A standard at the time, or was that the B standard?
The B standard, yeah, because so I ran it when the time cutoff for the B standard was 2:43. And then, like a year and a half later, they're like, oh, just kidding, 2:45. And so I was like,
was that the goal? Was the goal to qualify?
Yep. So that was the goal. I had trained right at like that 2:42 pace. So I was pretty on the nose. And so I had trained for that. I thought that I was able to do it. And it's like, I think I can do this. And actually that was probably one of like the most flawless marathon I have still run. And I'm just like, man, I'm like, if I can just channel that energy into all of the marathons I do.
Why do you think it was so good?
I think so going into the first marathon, I had been at Hansen's and then I had left, but I still was in contact with a few of the Hansen's athletes and just running with some of the women who were there when I was there. They had talked a lot about patience in the marathon and how important it is to stay relaxed and stay calm. And obviously Kevin and Keith Hansen are marathon gurus. And so really just throughout my whole time there was always, these reminders of when you get to the marathon, the race doesn't start until 20 miles. And I'm like, oh my God, I've never run 20 miles. And so just having like that sort of background and knowing that I needed to be patient. And also I was pretty nervous too, because during that buildup, I had not run over 20 miles. So I had never run over 20 miles ever in my life. And so I was like, okay, just get to 20 miles. And I don't know what I thought was going to happen. I was like, hopefully like I don't explode like at the 21st mile. But so I was just very patient and just trying to really, hit my splits and stay present, like we were just saying. And, since then, I think because I ran that in my first marathon and I have subsequently like PR'd and a few other distances since then, I've been more in the mindset of I want to be really aggressive when I race, which is a good thing too. I mean, that's not a bad thing, but I think there was a little bit of a timidness in my first marathon that I could probably use some of that still when I'm racing.
To like sit and relax a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. Whereas, after the 2016 trials, because it was, yada, yada, super hot. I'm sure there's
I ran 10 miles on the course that morning, like 2 hours before you guys ran. I was like drenched. And I was like, thank God I went at 8 a.m. and I was like, thank God I'm only running for 10 miles today.
Yeah. I remember doing my shakeout before, like 4 hours before the race and being like, wow, it's a perfect temperature right now.
Right.
But so after the 2016 trials, I was 39th, which was a good day for me. And I was happy with that. Like that met my goals, but I felt like I was in phenomenal shape. So of course, like going back to being aggressive right after I crossed the finish line, I was like, I'm going to Chicago in the fall and I'm running a PR. And so that's what I did. So that's where my PR is from Chicago. I ran 2:40 and change.
Isn't it wild how the mindset can create different outcomes and create, if you can sharpen it or use it sort of as a tool, you can get whatever you want out of your body. And in my first marathon, I have no clue what shape I was in, but I ran a 3:35 and I don't think I was in that kind of shape, but it was such a small race that by mile 15, I thought I was in the lead pack and I just like kept running faster and faster. And I never hit a wall until like mile 25 or 26.
Oh, wow.
And at that point I was like, okay, cool. Like I'm done. But it was like, I was like, what if I win my first marathon? And I just like ran way out of my fitness and it worked. I was a little delusional because I finished 19th. I was in like the second pack, but it's one of those things where like sometimes you can will yourself to do something more than what might be possible, or just like get more physically out of yourself than what you think is possible mentally.
Absolutely. And that, yeah, so to fast forward even more, we can certainly go back to the 2020 trials and everything in between, Chicago and 2020 trials. But I just recently started working with a new coach and a new group. Woo! Just had our first practice on Monday, with
Nice.
Matt Hensley of Boulder Underground. And he focuses a lot on that mental piece. And so I had kind of been debating about, getting back into like a structured training group. And I talked to him on the phone before, just to get a feel of what his whole shtick was. And he talked a lot about, doing mindfulness exercises and meditation, and talking about how a happy runner is a good runner, and how that's just as important as the physical component. And I was sold. I was like, yes, this is what I want at this point in my career. This is ticking all my boxes. And, I just firmly believe that is such an important piece to running well. And like mindset, especially in the marathon. Oh my gosh, because there's so many variables. And so like the one thing you can control for sure is your mindset going into that.
Yeah, I think as we were saying, it's such an underutilized tool for many. So I'm curious, how specifically do you use mindfulness in training and racing,
Sure.
in order to get the results you're looking for?
Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think of like a mantra, especially during a marathon or a longer race. And I will create one for different parts in the race. So, for like the first 10K, it's more about thinking like smooth and relaxed, and thinking about that and just having fun. Like we're having fun. We are having fun. No. And
this is fun. I promise I'm having fun.
Yeah. And trying to keep it more casual and more relaxed. And then, when I'm getting to like 15 miles, it's like, okay, we're doing great. Doing great, but there's still a really long way to go. And then, getting to 20, it's like, okay, like we're going to start racing. And that's when we can really turn the gears over, as long as I'm feeling good. But trying to create very specific mantras for each race. So those were just examples. But, for like my upcoming time trial, I don't know the distance yet, but I'll have a certain mantra for that. And, I'm probably going to end up doing a 2-mile time trial, I bet. And so it'll be about being like, okay, like smooth and fast. And then closing in on like the last couple laps, it's like, okay, like, give it all you got, like give these laps hell, and trying to really create personalized mantras while I'm racing. And then certainly to, the component of before race day, just having a very like trying to create like a stress-free environment, and, just doing things I like. So usually it's watching reruns of The Office or reading and just really trying to keep it light. I'm not doing any work, because I want to focus on the race, and it's like work will be there after, or any other projects I have going on, and trying to just remember that it's like, I'm doing this because I want to. Like, this is because I want to do it. Like, no one's forcing me to do this. And just reminding myself that there's a lot of joy in the race. And I can't remember who said it, but it might have been Shalane Flanagan. It probably was. But something along the lines of that, like a race is a celebration of your training. And I really, really like that, because I do like to race. And that just reminds me, like, yeah, like this is fun. I love to run. I like this. And that, it's something that I'm there to celebrate all the hard work that I put in.
Has that always been your perspective though?
No, No, when I was
how did you get there?
I think after college, because I really enjoyed running in college and racing in college, but obviously post-collegiate running for most people who are in a position to run post-collegiately, it's like, okay, well, the motivations are a little different now. And, I'm not running to get points at the MAC championship or make it to nationals or, to keep my scholarship. And, post collegiate running is, I'm really doing this for myself and I'm trying to make a go out of it. And so I had to really shift focus. And that was really tough for me to wrap my head around, okay, this is different. I mean, it's similar in that, you're still training really hard, you're still running pretty much every day, but the motivations are really different. And I had to think about what was actually motivating me to run post-collegiately. And it was, is this because I'm good at this, or is this because I'm enjoying this? And is this something that I want to make the main focus in my life, or is this something I want to complement my life? And, I wish I could say that I've really mastered those questions by now at age 30. But I think, it just ebbs and flows really. And, I think I've arrived in a place now where I want running to complement my life and to be something that I curate around some of the other things going on in my life, and not necessarily that I'm curating my life around running. And for me, that puts it into a perspective of, oh, this is something I get to do. It's not something I have to do. This is something that I get to go out, I get to work out on the track and run hard for an hour and a half, and then I go to work. And I really enjoy that hour and a half. And so for me, that perspective shift has been really helpful. And wearing many hats, I think is also helpful for someone like me. Whereas I understand, especially my fiance, Noah, his whole life is running. I mean, obviously his family, our friends, he plays guitar, and everything like that, and the dogs. But for him, it works, to have, and he has that's his career. He's a 209 guy. So of course, his career is running. And for him, having that singular focus really works. But for someone like me, that perspective shift of being able to get to do this and fit it in with the rest of the things going on in my life, that works for me.
Yeah, I think it's all about figuring out which side of the equation, or which side of the aisle, I guess you could say, for a term that's hot these days, which side of the aisle you're on in terms of all in, focus and diversification of what you do in your day. I'm curious what your experience is. So I've spent a fair amount of time in Boulder, and it's it's no surprise that when you walk down the street, you can see Olympians and professional athletes and people who, as Matt Daniels would joke, I'm a sub-4 guy. So is the rest of the street. Yes. So what is that like for you as someone who's running fast, but it's not your everything?
Mm-hmm. It's been interesting. Like I said, that ebb and flow, when I came out here about 3.5 years ago now, I wanted to do my focus is running, but because it's not financially responsible responsible of me to just only run, I'm going to get, a 30-hour a week job, which is like 80% of the runners here in Boulder, where everyone comes out here and is like,
yeah, the coffee shops are strong for that.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Everyone's like, I'm moving to Boulder. I'm joining this team. I'm going to work 20 to 30 hours a week at this running store. And it's like, yeah, you and
do consulting.
Yes, yes. And it's like, great. Like you and like 1,000 other people here. But
which is great. I love it. I would do that in a heartbeat.
For sure, which is awesome. Like it's great. But so that was what I thought I wanted to do when I got out here. And I did do that for a while. I joined Boulder Track Club, which was coached at that time by Lee Troop. And so I was with his group and racing, and I ran a PR.
He's a riot, huh?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He's
like one of my favorite people.
It's always going to be a good time when he's around. And I mean, he's just Boulder legend. So, I came out here, was training under him, PR'd in the half, PR'd in the 12K out at Bloomsday in Spokane, Washington, and was training pretty well, but just was having some like mental health stuff that I felt like I was like, what am I doing? Like I'm a 75-minute woman, but is this something that's like worth pursuing? And just having a lot of like self-reflection, and I was having some like mental health challenges, and just was like, I need to hit pause on this. And so I ended up quitting Boulder Track Club because I just was like, I need to take care of myself. Like running can't come first now. And so in doing so, I took maybe like a couple months where I was just sort of jogging and going to therapy at one point, like twice a week. And then I'm sure you've heard I'm sure you've heard about me, but I'm sure I've read, just so you know.
I listened to 10 hours of podcasts about you this morning.
Okay, great. But I talked about this on Lindsay Himes' podcast. I'll have another. That fall, I ended up being hospitalized for a psychiatric episode. And so that really shifted things. And I realized that my mental health was important, like the most important thing, and that running would come around. And so I did that. I just focused on my mental health. I wasn't really working because of said mental health issues, and just really trying to get it together, as some people might say. And then, after that, I was still kind of left in this emotional hangover of all of that. And was like, well, now what do I do? And so that's when I was like, well, okay, like I'm going to start substitute teaching and see if I like that. And I'm going to run when I want to, and make sure that, mentally I'm taking care of myself and physically. And so that's when like my career started to take off, where I was like, okay, I'm going to go get my master's in early childhood education. I'm going to focus on my career. And so that shifted. And so I've been doing that for the last few years, and running, on my own accord and basically making my own schedules. But after the 2020 trials, which was disastrous for me, I'll be the first one to say it. I did not have a very good race. I think I was working a lot. I was finishing up a master's degree. I was starting to write a blog about my dad, and I was just feeling very burnt out. So I took a very extended break during the pandemic, where, I feel like you either saw, like you said, either one side of the aisle or the other, to take it back to politics, but where people were getting in like phenomenal shape, or people were like, oh, I'm not running because there's no races. And I was in that category of, I'm like, oh, well, there's nothing going on. I just had a disaster of a race. I think I just need to calm the F down for a little bit. And, you know, as awful as the pandemic was, or is, I should say, it really forced me to, and the rest of the world, to really stop and slow down. And I really needed that. I didn't realize how much I actually needed that. So I didn't run for about 6 months from like March till, you know, November of this year.
Well, what was that like?
I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. Like, I hadn't
Became
taken
a NARP.
Yeah, I was like, this is great. And
it's hard to remember when to shower, though. That's the only downside.
Oh, totally. I know. And I have curly hair, so I'm like, do I really need to shower? Like, you can't really tell. And so, but I thought it was great. I really didn't realize how badly I needed it until I did it. And I felt like my body was just like, oh, thank you so much. Like, we can relax and we can heal from all the little niggles, and I don't have to like just fit everything in and go run 10 miles. And I just really needed that. And it just allowed me like a huge mental break and physical break. I started riding my bike a little bit more. I was walking the dogs, you know. I was like, this is great. And
30 minutes of fitness 3 to 5 times a week.
Exactly. I was like, fantastic. I was like, this is the life for me. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to actually like run at, you know, like compete or anything anymore. I was like, well, maybe I'm just tired and I'll just start running when I feel like it. But it allowed me the time to heal my body, and just like mentally take a break from running. And then also it gave me the time to like do other things that I wouldn't normally do. Like, I went hiking with my cousin a lot, who lives out here as well. And I mean, that's something that like I would not do if I was training hard. I would not go on like a 5-hour hike. So to be able to do that, it really opened my perspective and just like, oh yeah, there are so many other things I would like to do. And I think, you know, I started running again. It's like, of course, caught the bug again. And, you know, it's hard when you live with a 209 guy to like not run. And so,
who is this guy? I've never heard of him.
Yeah, Noah Droddy. I don't know if you've heard of him, but so,
I hear he's great. He's great for growing followers on your social media.
He really is. Oh my gosh. If I'm like, I'm riding these coattails, baby. I was like, you can't get rid of me. Like, we're engaged. I was like, to the moon. Let's go.
I find the dynamic that you guys have to be hilarious. I don't know if it's just like a show on social media, but it's very funny.
No, it's more like Noah's sitting on the couch and I can tell that he's like tweeting or doing something on social media. And so I'm like at the kitchen counter, like doing work. And I'm like, I need to go take a break and see what he's up to.
You can't be like browsing his social, like with him like 10 feet behind you, right?
Right. And so I'm like, what you doing? Like, or
and you know what's going through his head because it's on the internet.
Yes. And sometimes it'll be like he's really upset about people running in the bike lanes. Like, I don't, you know, he's very very
relatable content.
Yes, it is. It's very relatable content, but he'll tweet something.
Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah.
I don't get it. It's a bike lane. It's for bikes.
Okay, well, Noah Droddy may have something to say to you. So.
Well, I mean, it's not for cars. Running in the bike lane is totally acceptable.
Okay,
I was running in the bike lane.
Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I was running in the bike lane yesterday, and because I live in a populated area, and I'd rather run in the street than
totally.
Not do that. And there are just cars that park everywhere in the bike lane. next to signs that say this is a bike lane.
Yeah.
So I'll have to pick Noah's brain on that one.
Yeah. It's so like sometimes he'll be tweeting something that whether it's political or running politics or running, and I'll like stop my work and go on Twitter or Instagram and I'm like, oh, someone's feisty this morning. And he's like, well, you know, like, it's like, I'm sick of this. And it's funny to be behind the scenes because I can tell when he's like brooding. And I'm like, I know you're going to tweet about this. Like, I know you're going to say something.
You know that something's coming.
Yes. It's like, I know you're going to say something. But so, yeah, it's very fun. It's just, oh, Noah, he's, you know, it's just really funny.
If you know me, you know that I always do my own research and also try everything out before sharing it with you. I've been using Access Nutrients for a while now, and while I can't pin all of my strong workouts and long runs to a single thing, I have been feeling very strong lately and definitely getting what I need out of my food, at least according to my blood work. Check out accessnutrients.org to learn more about their product and research and use the code FTLR for 10% off your first order. And now back to our conversation. So let's talk about run specialty and barefoot and CrossFit.
Oh my gosh. Well, because so since I've joined Boulder Underground and now I'm back to training and doing some more workouts, I wanted to get some flats. And granted, I have the Saucony Endorphin Pros, little plug there, which are great. But I also am like, I don't really need to be doing like 6 by 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off in those. So I needed like a pair of flats, something like more of a tempo shoe. And so I was like, well, let's go to one of like the local running stores and, say hi and also see if they have like an Adidas Boston or something like that in stock in my size. And so when we went there, both of us were like, we're like, oh my God. We just saw shoe boxes all over the floor and Noah's like, oh, this makes me feel like ill. He's like, I'll never forget just like putting away shoes and like repackaging them. And I was like, oh yeah. And we were sort of joking with one of the women who works at Boulder Running Company when we were there. And we're like, oh, we used to work in run specialty. She's like, oh yeah. And I was like, how many people come in here wanting that Brooks Beast? And she's like, she's like, yep, that or the Brooks Adrenaline. I was like, absolutely. And so we were just kind of joking about that. But then Noah and I started talking about like, what's the worst time period you've worked in run specialty? And so I worked at my first run specialty job was at the Hansen store and during the 5-finger craze. And I may be wrong. This may not have been a Kevin Hansen or a Keith Hansen move. It may have been one of the managers. But when the five fingers came out, they ordered like 4 sizes. That like, so 4 boxes of them and then put them in the corner of the store all the way in the back. So like you could not see them. And then when the lawsuit happened, they kept those shoes there in that back corner, but had printed out the paper, talking about the lawsuit and taped it above those 4 boxes.
And they probably sold, right?
I can't remember, but I just was like, I was like, this is amazing. And
so you want to hear a funny story?
Yes.
So I was not much of a runner back in 2013, but I owned the 5 fingers, and I was doing CrossFit like a little bit, and so I was a walking cliche, and and the Boston Marathon bombings happened, and I was like, I'm gonna be a runner because I live in Boston, and that's what everybody said. And my long run at the time was like 5 miles. And the day after the bombing, I went out and I ran from the top of, I parked my car at the top of Heartbreak Hill. I didn't know that was Heartbreak Hill. And I ran into Boston, and I get into Boston, and I get turned around by a SWAT team who says, "You can't be here right now." I said, "Okay, please point that machine gun elsewhere." And I turned around and ran back to my car. 13.1 miles later, I wake up the next day and I'm like, "Oh shit, I can't walk." And I got a stress fracture from running an untrained half marathon in the Five Fingers.
Oh God. Well, I will say justice served for you wearing the Five Fingers.
Yeah, I guess we've ruled out a potential podcast sponsor, so they'll never sponsor this
Sorry,
podcast.
guys. Yeah, it's just yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so funny.
So, jumping over to a different topic, you were talking about curation of your life around different aspects, and I can't help but comment on the curation of your Sunday Instagram content. So let's talk Sunday mood board, which I look forward to every Sunday to see what you've got on your mind.
So first,
what is your Sunday mood board?
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much for asking. So every Sunday, I put together a mood board of a story on my Instagram, and I post photos or posts that I've seen throughout the week that I'm like, this is really speaking to me right now. And I started off with, well, lately the theme has been like cute animal to begin with, but I play around with that. But then
you got to hook people in,
yeah, but it always ends with the Olsen twins. And so that's how you know it's over. Although I will say I ended it with Anthony Bourdain maybe a month and a half ago. And I probably got like 20 DMs of people being like, what the hell are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I was like, I was just experimenting. And one of my friends was like, look, there is so much confusion in the world. This is the one thing I count on for consistency. And I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Wait, your friend counts on the Olsen twins for consistency?
Yes, to end my mood board. And they were like, how could you do something like this in 2020 without warning us?
Incredible.
And so, so anything that I stumble across on my Explore feed or in my main feed, I'll save it. And then I have basically like a whole, like a deluge of photos and images in my saved folder on Instagram. And then I go through that on Sunday morning and I put them together in an order that is aesthetically pleasing to me, or is kind of like tongue in cheek a little bit. Like the two images are very different, but kind of go together, have a similar theme. So yeah, I mean, this is, I've curated this now for about 2 years, so kind of got a system down.
Nice. One of the things that I appreciate about your use of social media is that you don't, stay in one lane, and you've acknowledged that we all have many lanes. Yeah, exactly. And that you are multidimensional and you speak your mind when appropriate, which is always. So has that always been how you've used social, or has that been a bit of an evolution as the years have gone on?
I think I've kind of always used social media as that in that way, especially because so I also grew up in the like early 2000s, like to mid 2000s, when Facebook just started. And so where you could just like put up a status of like partying with my friends, and then you'd upload the album of said party from your digital camera a couple hours later. And so I kind of grew up,
I think we're the same age because that was like the in my entire like mid-teens.
Yes. I joined my high school network when I was on Facebook. So, which is just like
You got
so silly.
the invite from Zuck.
Yeah, exactly. Like Zuck and I are super tight. And so I grew up in that age where I felt like social media was, a thing where you put your thoughts and feelings out there. Like we grew up in the era of like the Zanga journals online in MySpace where, or like you curated and like, took your time to create your AIM profile in a way message.
Yes.
And so I've always felt like
percent
this is
and
mine.
talk to you later.
Yes, exactly. And so it's always been for me something that it's like, this is mine. And, I think now, especially like in the last, like year with all of the social justice movements going on, BLM and talking about police reform and, politics right now, I think it's even more important to use your platform, especially if you have some sort of following. I mean, granted, I only have like 1,600 followers, but I think
Tell
it's
Noah
important
to run another race.
Well, I know. And so, but I think it's important because, not just because, I have X amount of followers or anything like that, but also because it's like, this is how I actually feel. And this is important to me. And so I'm going to share it with people. And, I would say most people, do like the hand clap emoji when I put it on my story on Instagram or, like my tweet. And that's great, just to like know that other people out there feel the same way. But, there's also people who will send me DMs, like literally telling me to stay in my own lane. And it's just like, you don't have to follow me. Like, this is mine. Right. I'm always going to post like my own feelings and thoughts on here because this is my social media handle. And if you don't like it, I mean, please unfollow me. Like I don't follow certain people because I don't like what they post. And, I don't think that's like wrong or bad. It's just like that. Okay, great. Like, I don't want to see that in my feed. And, that's not something I want to expose myself to. So yeah, I just think, it's important to use social media, not just for Sunday mood board, but to express yourself because, people might say, oh, well, it's like an echo chamber in terms of if I post, because granted, most of my followers are more like left leaning or, support BLM and social justice movements. And, I think about, well, is this like an echo chamber? But then like I see stuff on other people's stories and I'm like, oh, like that's super interesting. Or they post a podcast that they're listening to about, something in history or something that's going on right now. And I'm like, well, you know what? I get a lot of things from when other people post that what they're listening to or what they're doing or what they're reading. And so I like to think that by like sharing what I'm doing too, like maybe someone else will be like, oh, like, that's great. Thanks so much for sharing. And so I think social media can be used for more than just, flexing post-workout running pictures and stuff. So
definitely dogs too.
Dogs too.
No, I totally agree. I a lot of the feedback that I've gotten has been, first, I have been surprised with the people that I follow and my followers when I challenge them and when I ask questions and when I do things that are, you could say, outside of the lane. And by that, I mean not running related. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's outside of our lane. I think it's all of our lanes. But what I mean by that is there are a lot of people with differing views. And I think a cornerstone of any good community is the ability to disagree and to disagree on things that, more than just, shoes and stuff like that, and have these conversations about things that actually matter. So it's good to see. It's great to see. And I definitely encourage you to, keep doing it because I think it's the kind of thing that it has a ripple effect that the more that people see it, the more that they realize that, it is everybody's lane, and you might have
Absolutely.
10 followers or 50 followers or 50,000 followers, but anybody can make an impact, and that's the only way that we can actually get somewhere.
Absolutely. And honestly, so I have 4 older sisters, so I have a bunch of nieces and nephews, and they follow me on Instagram. So I'm also like, well, I want them to know,
like a role model.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, these things are important to me, and like I care about you, and so that's why like these are important to me. And I hope that one of my nieces always sends me, she's 14, so like very, very big deal when she responds to my Instagram stories. So she's like constantly like giving me like the hand clap emoji, and I'm just like, oh, to be validated by Gen Z
14-year-old. Yeah. I'm the same way with my cousins. They're not quite as young, but it's like it's a fun way to connect with family and friends and things that people that you don't get to see on a regular basis, and
absolutely
show that we're more than just runners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. I think my last question, I could go on forever here, but looks like you're running out of space, so I think we're going to have to keep it tight here.
Okay.
What is one thing you wish people knew about you?
Oh, that's a good question. Oh man, I've been coming with the heavy hitters. I think that probably just what we've been talking about is that I'm more than just a runner. I feel like, especially in terms of people with running, and if you're running at like an elite level, or like kind of where I am right now, like sub-elite, breaking into that elite level, people see like your time on a piece of paper and they're like, oh my God, like she totally bombed, like geez. And it's like, well, yeah, I did, but like also like I was doing other things. And it's like, that's not an excuse, but just to know that it's like, I'm more than just my numbers on the paper, and that, I am passionate about a lot of things, and I care about things outside of running. And I think that makes me a more well-rounded person, and that, and really I think like that can be taken for any runner, especially higher profile runners, where I think they can get a lot of flack for bombing a race. And it's like, well, really, like average Joe running fan like has no idea like what was going on behind the scenes. And so I think just I would like people to be a little more empathetic towards each other. And I think that that's like a really big theme going into 2021 from 2020, is that people are like, okay, let's be more kind to each other and more empathetic and more compassionate. And so I think just like for me personally too, is that, something people don't know about me is like, I have a lot going on behind the scenes of running. Like I'm not just a 240 marathoner. I'm an author, I'm an educator, I'm a dog mom, mood board creator, like we said in the intro, and that, I'm a multifaceted person. And, I think sometimes I get, especially here in Boulder, it's great because the running community is really big, but I think a lot of times when we were socializing in larger groups, a lot of times it gets stuck into this like, oh, like how was your last race? And then like the conversation kind of just gets stuck in running and just talking about like your last workout. And sometimes I'm just like, oh my, this is just so boring. Like I like, yeah, I want to hear about your workout and your race, but also like, have you like done anything cool lately? Have you like made anything? What have you read lately? And so I'm trying to bring more of like that multifacetedness into my conversations with people, and just trying to like just be more aware of that in others, as I want them to be aware of that in me.
I love that. It's definitely a goal I have with this podcast, where like I've very explicitly said to Olympians and professional athletes, like, you've done some amazing things in your past. We're probably not going to talk about any of those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And let's look going forward, and let's look at what makes you unique, because I think there are so many podcasts and stories and articles about, the workouts that people did and the races, and I don't find it as relatable as the story you just told about yourself and what makes you unique and what, all of that stuff. I think this is the stuff that humanizes people, and it's, the splits and the races and the times, like that's a piece of it, but it's not as relatable. But the humanness and the empathetic side and all of that stuff, that's why people care about other people. It's not because you can run a 2:40 marathon. It's not because you can run a 2:09 marathon or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a 1:59 marathon, maybe. But
yeah, like I get that.
Yeah, but even still, like I'm mostly joking about that. But I think that it is the behind the scenes that make people interesting, and a conversation that continues to come up on social is athletes and social media and performance over social media, and is that, like, what is the most important? And I replied to a tweet the other day about it. I was like, both are 100% necessary to be a professional athlete today.
Absolutely.
Because plenty of people can run fast, but plenty of people are not interesting, or they're not sharing their story and bringing other people along for the ride. So I think that's time and a place for everything, but I think that's the thing that makes it interesting and aspirational. And I think that's all I've got to say on that topic.
Well, I 100% agree.
Very cool. Well, Emma, thanks so much for taking some time to chat. I look forward to your Sunday mood board, and maybe I'll see you in Colorado sometime soon.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Of course. That's it for today's episode. Like many long runs, it's sad when it has to end. I hope you join in next week on For the Long Run, and in the meantime, happy trails. If you've enjoyed this episode, it would mean a lot to me if you shared it so that others can find it and enjoy it too.